Hello and welcome back. We've got another review for you. We've been sent a book from Acción Press by Historex Agents and it's called Diorama Project 1.1. This is the first in a series of books that looks at all aspects of making a diorama and the contents of that diorama, vehicles, figures and so on. It's a really great format, beautifully presented. Let's take a look. As you can see from the cover, this is the English version. Some of you may be familiar with all the other titles that Acción Press releases, including particularly Panzer Aces, a magazine that's very well known. This is a soft cover book with thick paper, very nicely presented, it feels very sturdy, and there's plenty of pages, running to about 120 or so pages. The approach of this is interesting. The whole idea is that buying the series you get an insight into all aspects of making a diorama, and this one starts with the vehicles. In terms of vehicles, you've got 6 different themes or topics that the book is built around. The tanks are a Sherman in spring 1945, and that's looking in particular at dirt in a rural environment. There's a Sherman in the Pacific from February 1945. There's an M26 Super Pershing in the winter of 1945, and there again that's looking at rust and dust. A King Tiger with a special focus on dampness and rain effects, a Tiger 1 looking at mud and dirt, and a Renault R35 looking at rust and destruction. Let's take a look. There's a bit of a prologue that explains the whole concept and some photos of the finished dioramas that you'll be able to see in later releases within the series. This one, as we've mentioned, is looking specifically at the vehicles and the techniques to model those vehicles. Starting off with assembly. For assembly, it covers all the basics of the tools you'll need and techniques, and flits between different models. It covers things like integrating turned metal barrels and metal tracks, adding additional armour. So it takes a general approach across all the builds. You can see the destruction that will feature later. And there are little infographics that explain all the materials that are used. The artwork is of course excellent, as is the photography, and the standard of modelling, as you'd expect, is first rate. So in terms of painting, it walks you through the whole process of painting via excellent photography and artwork by modellers like Frédéric Astier, who you may know from Steel Masters, a very prolific model maker who creates fantastic dioramas. Plenty of photos to explain the weathering technique, and also little tips and tricks like fuel spills, worn metal and so on. All the paints are listed. You move on then to the Sherman in the Pacific. What's stunning about this, or what we found amazing, is you start with a brush painted camo scheme like this and explains all the stages to take it through via painting the wood to the finished one, which is just totally different and just looks so realistic in terms of a dirty, grimy, volcanic environment. All these are quite heavy on the weathering in terms of builds, so they reflect the modern style of painting and finishing, which is highly weathered, very kind of damaged paintwork and so on. And there you get all the paints and colours and some stunning artwork. Another build, an M26, looking particularly at rust and dust. And it explains various techniques that modellers may or may not know about. All very nicely detailed. Then in terms of dampness and rain effects, a modeller that many people may know, Adam Wilder, builds this King Tiger in April 1945. He brush paints the camo, which is explained, and then goes through a very sustained weathering process to show an old beat up King Tiger making its way to Berlin in the final days of the war. You end up with a stunning model and fantastic imagery. Bringing up the rear is the Tiger 1, and this looks at mud and dirt. This is interesting to see the different paints and products this modeller uses and the different techniques that can be witnessed. Again, it's a very individual style of finish, very sustained and heavily weathered. Oh, and there's one more, the Renault R35 Rust and Destruction by Shinpei Nohara. Lovely little diorama there, but this section of the series focuses on how that destroyed R35 was built and painted. Now you get the idea of what's to come here. There'll be 1.2 will be on World War II figures, the figures within the diorama, Then we start with another one, and you can see different languages here. It's going to be released in 4 languages. 1.3 is going to be sceneries, which is diorama techniques 1, and then sceneries 2, diorama techniques 2 will be in the 4th release, and they're all coming soon. This is highly collectible. The Diorama Project series would be a welcome addition to any collection of books, and you can just grab it and browse. It's really pleasant to browse for inspiration. It's so beautifully laid out and photographed. It's highly recommended. It's available now from Historex Agents. Don't hesitate to get it, and thanks for watching. Bye.